Hello, and welcome to another edition of Between Two Owls. I'm your host, Tom Price, and with us today we have Dr. Benjamin Seibold from the Department of Mathematics. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, where did you grow up?
I grew up in a town called Kaiserslautern in the southwest of
Huh.
Germany, and that's also where I went to university.
And were you interested in mathematics from a young age, or is that something you picked up later in life?
I think it became clear that I'm interested in math or physics or engineering. And one thing that then really drew me into going into mathematics was that I went to when I was a high school student, went to the university, visited, looked at different departments at opening days. And one thing that intrigued me about mathematics is the idea of coming from a very generic framework, thinking in terms of equations, and then being able to expand into many different applications, which is pretty much what I'm doing nowadays. So I have same equations and so similar equations, and they describe on the one hand stopping overs and traffic flow, on the other case fluid flows, and then on the other case might invasive species like the spotted lanternfly spread.
Awesome. So, let me just go back a little bit. So, as a child growing up, did you play any games or sports, musical instruments?
Well, I was playing soccer, football,
Yep.
like pretty much everybody in Germany does. I started when I went to college. I started picking up ultimate frisbee as a new sport, a
Mm-hmm.
team sport, which was a lot of fun. Other than that, obviously some biking, some running, and I did play in high school in the school orchestra, in the symphony orchestra.
Or would you play?
The bassoon. So as
Awesome.
among the cellos, yeah.
And do you have a football club you support?
Well, my local team of Kaiserslautern used to be
Awesome.
very good in the
Yeah,
in the 90s, and now they're not as good anymore, unfortunately. But I'm still following. Yeah.
cool. And did you, as an undergrad, did you have any sort of mentors or particular classes that changed what your focus was?
Very much. I mean, I think at some point you sense things and feel things and hear things outside of just the pure lecture. So like what do the people do in research, for example, and then there were special seminars, and I got involved in some modeling activities, for example. There was at my university a special Fraunhofer Institute for Industrial and Applied Mathematics, and there were always special activities and seminars where one could, even as a student, as undergrad research, for example, or graduate research, outside of the actual thesis writing, get involved in activities. And I think that, again, early on as an undergrad student, really drew my attention into especially applied mathematics as something that you come from theory, you come from equations, you think in terms of structure, but are really able then to make an impact in many different fields and many different applications. So absolutely, there's professors who were active in this were definitely, I remember, something that really drew my attention as a student.
Cool. And then, where'd you go for your doctorate?
I actually ended up doing my doctorate also at the same university in Kaiserslautern. I was in between for a year as an exchange student in UC Berkeley in
Okay.
California.
Hmm.
There was a special program of sort of international mathematics at my home university where I studied, and and part of this was that you had to spend a year at an exchange university as well, and that again was one of the fantastic experiences. So if students want to ask me sort of what are the things that they should definitely look into, one is of course involvement in research early on, and the other one is can you spend a semester or even a year somewhere abroad.
Awesome.
Obviously, there will be a post-pandemic life again
Sure.
where this is possible, but that is definitely very, very important.
Very, very cool. And so, how did you make your way to Temple University?
I did go after my PhD as a postdoctoral researcher to MIT in Boston, and then from there I applied to faculty positions. And Temple in 2009, when I joined, was currently expanding in computational science, computational uh, mathematics. In my case, and it was a great opportunity to come here in a great city, lively city, that is a great bang for the buck to live, but also in terms of Temple with new buildings, new environments being shaped, new activities, new compute center, compute cluster. So that was a great time to join.
And so what do you like about working with Temple students?
Well, one thing that's great about Temple students is that you have a great diversity, not just in terms of minorities, but also in terms of backgrounds, where they come from, what their families have been doing. You pretty much get everything in the student population, and really well mixed, which is something that I find really exciting. Another thing that I really like about Temple students is they tend to be very flexible about not necessarily, oh, I'm a computer science student, so I have to do undergrad research in computer science, for example, but are very open-minded to, oh, I'm going to work with this math faculty because he does some cool project on virtual reality, for example. And as long as it's interesting, a great level of open-mindedness. So that's something I really love about Temple University.
Great. And you've already alluded to it twice, so I want to make sure you get an opportunity to talk about the research that you're actively engaged in at the moment.
Yeah, so one thing that two projects that are particularly active right now is one thing on understanding vehicular traffic flow and understand how semi-automated vehicles, so vehicles that are already on the roads right now, adaptive cruise control systems, lane assist systems, can actually be designed to make traffic flow better on a system level. So not just on the individual vehicle acting safely and driving efficiently and comfortably, but every vehicle that has some adaptive cruise control system drives slightly differently. How can it actually make the traffic flow bigger for everybody, better for everybody? They're reducing emissions, for example. And there's lots of simulation work, lots of modeling work that we're doing, but we're working with teams at other universities on the engineering side of getting this actually into real world. So we have a Department of Energy project that really is focused on this. Another exciting activity right now, specifically local, is that collaborative with several faculty in biology and a big consortium on modeling the spotted lanternfly spread. So that's going on, of course, in Philadelphia, started a little bit north in Berks County, and has spread around and is keeping on spreading. So the key interest is, can it be contained? And what control measures are there? And for that, one needs to understand, how do they spread? What's their mechanism of their life cycle? And we're developing mathematical models, principled models for describing how these things work, their spread, their life cycle, and trying to help the stakeholders like USDA, Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, to then think of good countermeasures and devise good plans of doing something and contain the spread.
Very, very cool. Are you collaborating with Matthew Helmus on any of that?
That's right, exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah, so Matthew
Cool.
Helmus and Jocelyn Beam we are sort of the Temple team working on this, and then there's a broader consortium of many universities that's trying, of affected states particularly, that is trying to do something. But the spotted lanternfly is really a big concern. Like California, for example, has a lot of concern, because they know it's very easy for them to get there. So some of our models, for example, could the cool thing about mathematical models is you can apply them to what if scenario. So you can sort of say, okay, if we understand the principles, we can apply the model to, if they got introduced to California, how would they spread? How rapidly? What could you do? So that's the part of our work that where we're bringing together mathematical modeling and equations with the actual field science.
That's awesome. That's a great, like, practical application of what your work is.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to shift gears just a little bit, talk a little bit about your personal life. So what do you like to do for fun?
Well, play Ultimate Frisbee, for example. Obviously,
cool.
not much is happening right now. So one thing that I started picking up in the pandemic is trying to learn a little more about woodworking. So building small things, building some furniture out of real wood, because that's a great thing to do. Other than that, going out for bike rides. Living in the northern suburbs of Philadelphia, so there's some nice opportunities, nice bike paths to go on. So that's great fun.
And what do you enjoy most about your friends? What do you appreciate most about your friends?
My friends?
Yes.
Well, what I don't appreciate is that I cannot see them in person right now. That's absolutely the biggest obstacle. The greatest thing, obviously, is sharing a similar sense of humor. That also transfers over to having Zoom meetings and connecting by Zoom. I think we all try to sort of make the best out of a problematic situation, but that's definitely something that's very important. And one silver lining is, of course, that since everything is virtual anyways, I definitely have much more contact now with people in different time zones on the West Coast, in Europe as well. As long as you arrange everybody's schedule with morning hours and evening hours, it's actually sort of a little bit of a silver lining that I actually talk much more with people actually in Europe and old friends. So that's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. What are you currently reading, or what's sort of in your Netflix or Amazon Prime Video?
So you mean not papers?
Well, you can. I mean, if you're
in German, yeah. Well, let's see. Actually, one thing that I did pick up, I think I can say it, is actually some Dungeons and Dragons manual.
Really?
Some role-playing games. So that's a recent thing. But another thing that I started picking up recently is the old Asterix comics. So Asterix is a comic strip from France, very popular in Europe. So that's something I recently discovered again as reading materials. In terms of books, I have still I just finished. I forgot the title of the book by Hans Rosling. How the World Really Is, or something. I forgot the title of the book, but Hans Rosling, a great book about like showing that really lots of examples of how we think sort of this picture of the world that's a sort of developing world, and they all live sort of in huts or something, right? That this is a completely wrong picture of the world. That's not how it is anymore. There's almost everybody in the world. Family has 2 kids on average, and so on, and really showing how many of these things are actually, many of these conceptions that we have about the world are completely wrong. Really interesting, really eye-opening. But also one thing, I just finished the book. In the end, he talks about what could be the key problems to the developments and progress that has been made in the world. And one big thing he talks about is a potential global pandemic. So that book was written a few years ago, but it's really interesting to see, actually read about that, how accurate the predictions were.
Cool. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I'm going to do something called rapid fire response. I'll give you 2 words.
Right.
You just state your preference. Tea or coffee?
Tea, absolutely.
Morning or night?
Nighttime. Night owl.
Dark or milk chocolate?
Dark.
Offense or defense?
Defense.
Dogs or cats?
Neither.
Half full or half empty?
Half full.
Hot or cold?
Right now, cold. Snow is great. I love the snow.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being on the show. It's been great chatting with you.